Today is April 16th, 2021, and this is your daily Half-Life 3 update. There is no news about Half-Life 3. Yesterday, I asked you guys for questions, said I would answer the best one in today's update. That comes from Paul DeFons, who asked DC or Marvel, and why. Basically, that was the gist of what he asked, DC or Marvel. It's interesting. I'm kind of in the middle. Uh, I would say the best way to put it is if you look at them both in general, the majority of Marvel is better than the majority of DC, but the best of DC is better than all of Marvel, if that makes sense. Like, I'll explain that more. Let's look at movies in particular. I mean, obviously people praise the MCU, and yes, the MCU has a lot of good movies. I particularly love the Spider-Man, Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. I love the Fox X-Men movies. Now, on average, like the majority of Marvel movies are better than DC movies. Green Lantern wasn't very good. The DCU hasn't been all that good. But the best of DC, we talk about like the Dark Knight trilogy. That's better than anything you got in Marvel, in my opinion. And that also ties back to Batman. I think Batman is a better character than any character in Marvel. So I think the thing Marvel has going for it is it's got more characters that are good or okay. Like I said, Batman is better than all Marvel characters. Uh, DC characters like Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, they're better than a lot of Marvel characters too. But with DC, once you leave Justice League, like once you leave the main Justice League characters and start going into more random, obscure, B, C tier characters, they don't hold up as much. If you exclude characters who frequently appear in Justice League, characters, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, uh, Green Arrow. If you exclude those characters, DC doesn't have a whole lot. Now, Marvel's mainstays, that's A tiers, like Fantastic Four, X-Men, Spider-Man. Those are great characters too. But what Marvel has that DC doesn't is when you get into the C tier and the D tier characters for Marvel, you have characters that are worth the time. A lot of the MCU is made up of C tier characters. Characters like Iron Man is honestly a C tier character, at least before the movies came out. Characters Hawkeye, Black Widow, all these characters that make up the MCU because Marvel didn't have the rights to the main properties like Spider-Man and X-Men and Fantastic Four. Those are the characters that you want to make movies for because those are the popular characters within Marvel Comics. So I know that's kind of been rambling, but that's just how I see things. It's I would almost say like Batman is his own category. So like I like Marvel better than DC, or I like Batman better than Marvel. So that would almost be the best way to say it. That's just comics. I think movies, Marvel has a lot of good or okay movies. DC, on the other hand, has got a lot of great movies, I think, or three. I don't know. It's Batman. Batman's the outlier to this whole thing. Batman is such a good character, in my opinion. TV shows, though, I think TV shows and animated, it's heavily leaning towards DC to the point where Marvel's barely in the conversation. Uh, I mean, the live action stuff that the CW has been doing, I mean, that's not my cup of tea, but it's still much better going there. Obviously Marvel has the Netflix shows, but Agents of Shield wasn't anything special. All the other live action stuff wasn't really anything all that interesting. Cloak and Dagger, The Runaways, no one cared about those shows. But I don't know, Marvel's catching up there a little bit. I'm still kind of not wanting to have the Disney Plus shows in like the conversation for TV, because they're at this point they really feel like just Marvel movies that have been extended. Like you got an extended cut of this movie and we're gonna break it up into episodes for you. That's kind of how that feels. Uh, but definitely animated. I think the best thing to say is animated is absolutely better for DC. DC has had a much better record with animated movies and animated TV shows. You look at something like Batman the Animated Series, Superman had an animated series. All the stuff they did with Justice League. I remember the very first, not the very first, but a Justice League movie that I used to watch a lot. It introduced Martian Manhunter, and it was all about an alien race that killed off the Martians, that left Martian Manhunter being the last Martian alive, and now this alien race was coming back to get them. I haven't seen that in a little bit, but it's good. Again, Marvel. Now, in this case, Marvel has an outlier when it comes to animation, and that's Spider-Man. So usually it's DC with the outlier being Batman, but now Spider-Man is the outlier in Marvel. Spider-Man has had a lot of good animated stuff. The 60s and 90s animated shows are good, and Spectacular Spider-Man is a really really good animated TV show. It's probably my second favorite superhero animated show after Batman the Animated Series. And I'm told Spider-Verse is good. I've never seen Spider-Verse. I'll see it eventually. I'm not too keen on the animation style that I've seen with Spider-Verse, so that has held me off seeing it for a while. This has been a very long video. I'm just trying to cover my bases here. I almost feel like when you ask this question, Marvel versus DC, a lot of people immediately go to movies, and it's almost more MCU versus DCEU, which is not a fair comparison at all. Although Zack Snyder's Justice League was really good. But when I think Marvel movies, I don't immediately go to MCU. I go to the Sam Raimi Spider movies and the Fox X-Men movies. But yeah, I don't know. I hope somewhere in those ramblings you got an answer. This is way longer than I had anticipated, but yeah. And that's, of course, DC, Marvel, those fandoms, there's definitely a toxic element to them, which I like to try and avoid. Star Wars has got a very toxic fandom too. I like to stay within fandoms that don't have, toxic elements in them. I guess the smaller fandom you got, the better it is. Like I don't feel like the Half-Life fandom is all that toxic. I don't feel like the Lost fandom is all that toxic either. Twin Peaks fandom is good, I guess. I suppose the Rick and Morty. No, the Rick and Morty fandom is a little toxic. They're kind of they're very impatient and kind of pretentious. I don't know. I'm talking too much. I'm worried I'm just gonna keep rambling if I say something that's gonna, get me canceled here. I don't want any of that shit. Yeah, if you have any more questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll answer the best one in tomorrow's update. And that has been your daily Half-Life 3 update for April 16th, 2021.